Good morning, everyone. This is Ron. It's a little after 11 a.m. Sunday morning, uh, and we'll go ahead and get started with our session. On yesterday, we started with looking at, or continuing rather, First Samuel, the first chapter, and I guess maybe about halfway through the chapter. And so we'll start here this morning, unless we have questions or comments or something that leads us to other scriptures. So, any questions or comments as we get started? Okay.
Ron, are you going to do a recap?
Yeah, I was. I'm terrible at that. I'll give it a shot. I never remember the key stuff though. But what the thing that grabbed our attention when we started with this is showing us how much this resembles who we are and what we are, and what our beliefs are. This is a story that we are familiar with when we look at Hannah praying and asking God for a son. She was barren; her womb was barren, which was explained on yesterday, and this prayer, God answers her prayer, and she gives birth to Samuel, and Samuel is dedicated to the Lord. That's the part of it what we know. But we looked at this in a deeper way, looking at the wordage, the verbiage here, and understanding that the coupling of the husband and wife is really the story here, the balance here is what makes all of this happen. So you see that all the way through in the relationship that she has with God. And even we talked about Ekanah having two wives, and the role that Peninnah plays in being the adversary here, or as she calls it, is worded in verse 6, her rival. So the one that provokes her. So all of this is a part of what takes place in the story, and it is also a part of who we are. As we tried to explain yesterday, those little thoughts and things that provoke you, to drive you, or keep you moving, keep you from being complacent, keep you moving in the direction towards your goal, is extremely necessary. So that's where we were in this, and someone wants to help me with it, because I'm sure there's some key things that I don't remember that were said. So, any questions or comments, or someone else want to help kind of tie it together?
Ron, I have a question.
Okay.
You had said, that, excuse me, that El means God, right?
Yeah.
And I looked, and what made me notice this is there were two concepts with the L in front of the name, but then you said also that Samuel has the L also. But my question is, why is Samuel has the L after the Samuel? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's a good question. If you give me a little bit to get into it today, hope, because I think we'll get there today.
Okay.
We'll talk about that. We'll talk about what precedes that, and what it all means. Kind of tie that together. But good question.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Was there anyone else that any insight or anything that you see?
Well, I wanted to share what I saw yesterday, we ended yesterday with Barbara talking about being barren and what that meant. And as she was talking, we got right to the end of everything and said we will wait and pick back up today. But it resonated with me because she said, and correct me if I'm wrong, Barbara, that barren meant to uproot. And so when she said that, I was sitting there and that just resonated with me. And it just started coming to me, and I began to understand that when we are going through situations, we think that we are sometimes in a drought. And what I mean by that, if you look at Hannah, when we don't understand the work that God is doing in us and what's going on with us and what's taking place by things being uprooted out of our lives, it seems like you are in a drought, in a barren place. And Hannah was, to me, she symbolizes everything that we do when we find ourselves in a barren place. She cried out to the Lord. She didn't eat. She fasted. She prayed. She was just like, I don't understand where I am. But we also talked about the start of this lesson is speaking of a journey. So as we look at her journey, as she is growing through, and I use the word like we always say, not going through, but as you're growing through, what you begin to understand is that when you think that you are in a drought situation, it's a spiritual drought that is different from a physical drought. And what I mean by that spiritual drought is giving all of the stuff that's been embedded in you, that through religion and all of these things, is being uprooted out of you. And as a result of you going through that, growing through that, when you come out on the other side and you look at your journey and you see what God has given you, that is why she could turn around and dedicate her son, give it right back to God. When we come through a situation or we come through whatever the journey, that part of our journey is right now, and we look back, we recognize that the male is that seed that impregnates. During that uprooting, we have been impregnated with something spiritual so that when we come out on the other side, we can rededicate all that we are back to God and recognize that this is who we are. Because I'm saying all of this because what God has been telling me, I thought for a while, like I feel like I've been in a drought situation. And yesterday I understood, no, this is a spiritual thing going on in the inside of you with things being uprooted so that you can see clearly what it is that I'm showing you. And he began to tell me where you guys are right now. You are moving at the speed of light. And I kept saying, I don't understand that. I don't understand that. And as I began to talk to Pastor about that and look at that myself, I began to realize where we are going is toward infinity, where we become infinite in that we are one truly with the universe. And Pastor explained that we have the opportunity now to access things from the macro at lightning speed and bring it back to this realm and change everything around us. So I'm excited about the journey. I'm thankful for the lesson. I'm thankful for all that we're being shown. And I'm very thankful that I now better understand what it means to be barren, because when you are spiritually bare, there's a work going on the inside of you. There are things that are being uprooted to bring you out to the other side where you're being impregnated with truth. And as a result of that, you grow. So I just wanted to share that this morning, and I hope that makes sense. So thank you.
Thank you. That tied the lesson up beautifully, and it brought us up to speed and made. I like your including the husband, the masculine energy in this, and so it shows you the oneness of that uprooting, the spiritual part of this, how that plays a role, that the masculine, the femininity plays a role in that. What is being filled with, and that was beautifully said.
Ron.
I like that. Yes.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Audrey. I'll go after you.
And I agree with Kathy, and I think that's why over in Isaiah 54, it tells the barren one to exult. And I think that's the reason why, because you're not being, you're not being forsaken. It's just, this is something you've got to go through to get to the next level, so to speak. Anyway, that's all I wanted to add.
Yeah, and in fact, what you guys are adding, because I think Kathy hit on something. Those times when we all feel isolated, alone. I think I said the pastor a couple weeks ago. I felt disconnected. I didn't feel connected to me. I didn't feel like myself, and I wanted to take a break. I wanted to pause, and lo and behold, it was a time when he kind of led the lessons for a couple days, and the timing of it was great. But I think we get those feelings. We don't know what they are or what to do with them, and so that kind of put it all in perspective for me, and I appreciate that. We are. The other word I would want to throw in there is reflections. We see who we are, and we know that religious stuff or those other things that you have filled yourself with that you had at one time considered valuable. You see those now and readily look back at who you were and the journey that you've taken, and prepare yourself to be filled again. The creation part is to being filled with something. So being filled with truth. I like that. Pastor, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. When Kathy said that, I saw a couple of things. One is when she talks about, when she mentioned she felt like it was the speed of light. What I saw was a dark cloud, and like a flash of light or a spaceship light going in and out of that cloud, quickly going in and out constantly. And what I saw in that was the light that we are is traveling in the midst of our wisdom, picking that wisdom up instantly and moving out of that dark cloud or the dark place and sharing it and going right back through it again. And as we go through that wisdom, or those times when we think that we are barren or on the sidelines, we are being infused with that wisdom because we're in the midst of it, and that's our greatest desire. And when we come out of that womb of wisdom, what happens is when we dedicate, when she talked about dedicating to the Lord the seed, what I saw in that is what we are doing right now is giving this seed back to the source from which it came. And what I mean is this: the seed came from the wisdom of Elohim. The understanding came from the wisdom of Elohim. And all of us on this line who are Elohim, all of us in this world who are Elohim, this seed is being given back to Elohim in the earth that lives in the body in this earth. Does that make sense?
I can see that, Pastor.
Did we lose him? I didn't hear the end of it. Something happened. What was it? There was the very end of that, Pastor?
That the seed, the wisdom that we're receiving in the womb of wisdom, that's when we talk about giving that seed back to God. We are giving it back to God, but not the Elohim who created us. We're giving that seed to the Elohim that we are created to be, meaning everyone on this earth who are Elohim and don't know it, or Elohim and realize they are. This seed that comes out of the womb of wisdom, the understanding of that seed is given back to Elohim so that we can grow through it, through anything that we face. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And yeah, I like that. That describes Samuel to a T. that decides that defines what he ends up being to a T when you look at his life. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Very good. Anyone else? Questions or comments? I'm going to read a little further and we'll continue the discussion. Again, we're in 1 Samuel chapter 1. And
hey Rod.
Yes, sir.
In that verse 11, why did she say that no razor will shave his head?
That's where I was about to pick up, Charles. That's a good question. Good question. Let's go and let me read that and let's go into it. And but I'm anxious to see how everybody sees this. And she made a vow and said, okay, that's okay. Hannah is she has just gotten, as we read on yesterday, she is weeping bitterly, and her I keep wanting to call her adversary, her rival, Peninnah, is really kind of teasing her because she can't have a child. So it is time to go up to Shiloh to give offering to God. And she has just had this conversation with her husband after he tells her he loves her. It tells us that the Lord has closed up her womb. And so when she has this conversation with him, and he says, am I not better to you than 10 sons? Hannah makes a stand. She rises up. And again, trying to see this from a spiritual perspective, that is the soulful part of you. That is that soulful part of us that is searching for truth. And as we mentioned on yesterday, I tried to use myself, for example. My rising up may look different from yours, but each one of our journeys has led us to a place where we had to take a stand. We had to look at what the religious thing in you is a discernment. You're looking at the love and the sincerity of your parents and those who instilled a love for God in you. That's what you hold on to. That's what you hold on to. All the rituals and all the other things that came along with that is what we uproot. So that's why it is so difficult to do, because those people, as you look at what Hannah did, mom and dad and granddad and uncle and all those people who loved God, that's what you feel. So religion is not only a religion. Religion is part of our lives. It is part of the love that was infused in us, and that's why it is hard to separate that wastefulness from the wheat. So that's why we go through what we're going through. So when we look at what Hannah did, it is all of us. It is describing all of us taking a stand, taking that part of that journey. Say, I gotta see this. I can't go any further without seeing this. This is tugging at my inner being. So that's where we are. So I'm going to start at verse 9. Then Hannah rose up after eating and drinking in Shiloh. See, she's in Shiloh, which is a important place to be here. She's at the place of Eli. She's at the place of the temple, the priest, and Shiloh is talking about the place that draws it out to extract something. So this is being drawn out of her. All of that stuff. She's looking at herself, making a decision. It is also, let me see here. Part of that root word means to make yourself prey, prey, as in make yourself vulnerable for a specific purpose. So this is a saying then that she's in a place of discomfort. She's doing something that is making her extremely vulnerable. She's stepping out of the everyday now that she's used to. So here she is. Now she rose up early, and now Eli the priest was sitting on the seat by the doorpost of the temple of the Lord, and she greatly distressed, prayed to the Lord and wept bitterly, and she made a vow to the Lord of hosts. If thou indeed look on the affliction of the maidservant and remember me, and not forget thy maidservant, but will give thy maidservant a son, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and a razor should not come on his head. Now, and you guys stop me if you see something here, okay? If the word here that comes to mind is Nazarite, from Nazareth. Jesus was from Nazareth, and as somebody pointed out yesterday, I think it may have been Barbara that said Samson was a Nazarite. Nazarite is talking about someone who is raised from birth to be righteous, to be holy, to be upright. So he's not to drink a strong drink. He's not to drink wine. I could not find anything for razor. I don't know what that portion of it means. If somebody else does, we'd appreciate some insight into that. But that is what that is saying. He will be dedicated to the Lord. So all this stuff that we are having to purge and uproot as been explained to us, this is saying this will be this child from infancy will belong to God, and even to support what we said the other day, this starts before he is even born. This starts before he was even born. So if I pause right there and I look at this, we look at this, I say in a spiritual sense, what I was trying to explain is what it meant to be naturally, to be a Nazarite, but in a spiritual side of it, part of us going back to the beginning is what this is explaining. When we tried to understand what it meant to be born again, we understood that to mean going back to the beginning. So from that point on, we became Nazarites. Our lives are dedicated to the purpose of serving God. And in serving God, you become the servant of man. You become the human that stands there and becomes the, I don't want to use the word energy. I want to say you are the one that receives the rhythm and the vibrations from the universe to put back into the earth. So we look at what this is saying, or Charles, it is talking about a dedication. It is talking about a spiritual thing that you become transformed into something that is completely spiritual from the soulful part of you, and that becomes your existence as you are being filled with truth. So I use the word conduit because we are constantly, as Pastor talked about, the vehicle going in and out of the cloud, you are constantly receiving. You are constantly giving. With every breath, we give and receive. You read something, you see something on TV that touches your heart. You hear about somebody losing a child or something that has happened in D.C. Concerning politics, and you take a deep breath. You are giving. You're giving peace out there. We're searching for resolutions all the time. So that's what this is talking about. This is talking about the transformation of what we are becoming, and it is saying this baby from his birth, from his inception, he would be dedicated to the Lord. He would be dedicated to truth. Can anybody explain that or add something to that, or maybe say it in a different way?
I would like to add something to it. In
Thank you, sir.
addition to when you talked about the wine, right? What that is saying is that you won't engage in anything that will cloud your thinking, that will shift your focus. It's more than the physical consumption of wine. It's from the spiritual perspective. That's the reason we talk about being purged. We talk about the major focus that we have is to bring enlightenment to the earth. Anything else is wine to us. If it becomes your single focus, or if it becomes, if it distracts you, takes your attention from this journey, then that is clouding your thoughts, your mind, your soul, and that is going against the Nazarene oath, or Nazarite's oath. The idea of the razor touching the hair is simply talking about your hair will not be cut off. Now, the connection between the spiritual and the hair, I have not clearly seen that yet. However, I do think I see clearly the whole concept of the wine. Now, the vow is sacred. The promise made not by your preacher, by saying, give me the right, giving you the right hand of fellowship. That is not made by anyone except you. And when you make that Nazarite vow, or that, then what you are saying is that you will abstain from anything that would distract you from the journey that you are on. So if anyone can seize what the hair is speaking to, what is it talking about? You won't cut off. It's not. I know it's more than. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think you gave a clue. Somebody did when they mentioned Samson. Hair was a symbol of strength. I wrote that down somewhere, now I can't find it. But when you were speaking, I thought of it. Hair was a symbol of strength. So could that be saying that there's nothing on earth that will move or change anything about you? And of course, that is a physical thing. But if you look at it from a spiritual perspective, I think they're saying that you will always be strong. You'll always have this. Being a Nazarite, you'll always have this connection to God. There'll be nothing here that will zap your strength or take your strength away from you. Can that be what that is saying? And again, I'm looking at it from the perspective of looking at Samson.
Additionally, the hair not shaved was an outward sign of an inward condition. So the Nazarite could not shave his head, and the Nazarite could not drink strong wine or any fermented juices, could not even eat raisins, could not even eat the skin of a grape. So this was an outward sign to people outside of the Nazarite that this person was consecrated and separated for the specific task associated with his creator.
Thank you.
Also, Barbara, in conjunction with what you were saying, what came to mind is Delilah. He was intimate with Delilah, and he shared his strength, the source of his strength, with her. So is that not saying that once you have made this vow, you cannot be intimate with the sources of religion, or those things that are adverse to humanity, those things that will be a distraction from the journey that all of us are supposed to be on. And if you do that, you lose your focus, but you also lose your power to be that source of insight, that source of enlightenment for others. And that becomes destructive to the people. I see that in what Samson did. It's not about the man Samson pulling down the columns in a temple. It is about, in a palace rather. It is about our spiritual promise to our Creator to continue this journey without distraction, with maintaining focus and ingesting nothing that would shift that focus. And that's the wine, the skin that Barbara explained. And we will not be intimate with anything that entices us to shift our focus. And the main thing about that is religion and the politics of this world. Thank you.
Thank you. A lot said there. And I like the way we pulled together Razor and what that meant, and Nazarite, all these right there. Is there anybody else want to add to that? Does it make sense to you? Again, I hope.
Ron, please.
Yes, sir.
But let me ask this question then. Does it resonate with you guys?
It resonated with me, Rev, because I didn't understand. I understood it, but I didn't get it fully until you start speaking about the script. It's the script. It's not like Samson putting down the pillars and stuff. It was a script that he had that cut the connection with him and his God. And a lot was said into this, and I was just jumping for joy because I was getting ready to cut in, but y'all was saying the same thing I was thinking of.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else?
Yeah, good morning, Ron. As you were speaking and as everyone was sharing, I did, look up the word razor, and in the Hebrew, it speaks of it in reference to change or an exchange. And so it's just interesting in terms of just being able to look at the word razor, and in terms of, that physical change versus an exchange, there's that illustration that just made me think a little bit in reference to, how we need to look at change, but more importantly, what is the exchange in terms of Hannah, making a commitment or vow to the Lord in reference to him, being commissioned, to serve God. But I think it was just interesting to look at it, from those both perspectives. And as I mentioned before, you had, the word marah, which in the Hebrew means, again, razor. But if you break it down into the verb, it talks about more, which is, which is that change and exchange process. I just wanted to share those thoughts. I'm done.
Thank you, George. That's a great addition too. Thank you. And that ties in and supports what we have said. And that leads me to the next question. Do we see ourselves here? Because that's the whole point of this. Does it resemble who you are and what you're thinking and what you feel? And I like the part that was added about being barren and the feeling and that place we are sometimes where we feel disconnected or maybe even a bit anxious. We know what that is now. We are being prepared for something. As George said, a change is coming, a more is coming. I hope we're not only getting this, I hope we see ourselves here, because I think this describes the spiritualness of who we are, and it separates it from the practical thing. A lot of what we've asked for, the being loving kindness, the being compassionate, the forgiveness, we are being prepared for that. And who can write down, or even, who knows what that's supposed to look like? What that preparation looks like. What does the earth look like while it's being prepared for that? So we our eyes are open, and we go through this, and we go through it with expectation, and we try to be filled with that wisdom that has been spoken of, the wisdom and understanding. So again, any questions or comments? We don't want to rush this. If someone has some questions.
Hey, Ron, this is Charles
Yes,
again.
Hey,
How
Charles.
do this fits with Leah and Rachel?
Barbara went into that a little bit yesterday, and if she doesn't mind, I'll let her and Pastor deal with that, because I think they explained it on yesterday or whatever, yesterday or the last Monday. So if you guys see any insight into that, we'd appreciate it.
The principle is the same throughout all of those stories of barrenness, whether it's Sarah and Hagar or Leah and Rachel. First of all, it speaks of duality, the duality in all of us. And so Leah was Rachel. Rachel was Leah in a sense. And it's the duality in all of us that we have to make a decision about. The barrenness speaks of what we've talked about. No life is brought forth until those things in us are uprooted that need to be uprooted. So we say we give life physically, but really true life is a spiritual birth. We used to say we're walking dead until we have that spiritual birth. True life is that spiritual birth. And so, again, the principle remains the same for barrenness as it relates to not only Leah and Rachel, but to Rebecca, who was barren, to Sarah, who was barren, and to Elizabeth, who was barren, to Samson's mother, who was barren. Only that divine seed of wisdom and knowledge could spring to life from that barren womb. And when it springs to life, we begin to understand more about the relationship of the feminine and masculine energies that we are, that they both cannot be separate. They're both one and the same. Both are required. One cannot occur without the other if you're going to be that spiritual being that you were created as.
Thank you.
Hey, Pastor, this is a question I need to ask right here too. That's the same thing in a man's life. If he is not totally giving himself to the Lord, or giving himself to be service of God, he's barren too, ain't he?
Yes, sir. That's the key thing there.
Absolutely.
Exactly. When we speak of barrenness, You just made the leap, Charles. You just saw what it is that I saw as I studied this. The fact that there can be fruit from the womb of the spiritual being who is both masculine and feminine. Physically, we have testosterone and we have estrogen, all of us, physically. But the leap is spiritually new ideas, new understanding, new knowledge, new wisdom can come from the womb of the spiritual being who can be, I don't want to call it a gender, but the spiritual being can create new life, new understanding, can share wisdom, can share love, can share things in a totally different way than they could have if they were not spiritual.
Before Pastor goes on, let me ask you this then, Barbara. Are you saying then that the transformation of becoming Elohim is genderless?
Of course. One and many and one. That concept, one and many, is what I think about. And when we're talking about going back to beginning, that's back to beginning. One and there was no difference. There was no all was the one and one was the all, in a sense. So we started when the Bible started talking about separation of Adam and Eve. Then that's when we started seeing people or individuals or physical beings when they're really, it really wasn't that kind of separation. That was not the intent. The intent was so that we understand that it is me and I am it. Same thing with Rachel and Leah. They are the same. Whenever we talk about duality, the spiritual makes the leap that there is no duality. There's only unicity.
Yes. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just agreeing with you. I see what you're saying. Beautifully said, Pastor.
Yes, I agree with everything that was said. And I do appreciate that insight that you had, Charles, from what was said. We all, as I see this, we all were walking around barren. We were the walking dead when we were engrossed in religion. When we were so tied to religion, we didn't want to hear anything else. We were barren. We were dead. And when we started asking questions and we started seeking the truth, what happened? Each spark that was in each one of us came together. And each one of those sparks that came together actually created light, and that light that it brought into existence, that it created. When we saw that light, we knew it was more light out there. So we kept persevering, we kept going until we got to a place where we became one, as we are now. And it didn't matter whether you were male or female physically. All of us have a womb, and all of us are barren in the same way until that womb of desire and questioning is open. And at that point, we become that seed that impregnates the macro. And what I mean by that is this: every single time that we look at the scriptures and see the mysteries or the hidden meanings of these scriptures, what we are actually doing is infusing the seed that we I'm sorry, we are releasing the seed that we have been impregnated with so that everyone can get an understanding as to who they are and can get an understanding of the expectations of our Creator when we make this commitment.
Thank you. Thank you, Pastor. Beautifully said. And good question, Charles. Does that answer the question for you?
Yes, it did.
Okay. Anyone else? Does anyone else have a question from that, or did you have problems or want something further discussed? Okay. Excellent. Excellent.
Hi, Ron. This is Angela. I got a question I wanted to ask.
Okay, Angela. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing good.
Good, good.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
In verse 10, when it says, in her deep anguish, Hannah prayed to the Lord, weeping bitterly. So, in her deep anguish, that was her crying out, asking for spiritual enlightenment, or did she recognize that she was Elohim at that point, or she would just, because when I look at it myself, if I'm crying out to the Creator, I'm crying out because I'm going to say spiritually, I know that I am not where I need to be, or just feel like I'm not receiving. So I just wanted the clarity. Is that what that scripture means?
The other day, yesterday, I kind of gave, used myself as an example, and I can give you several examples of this that has happened to me. One of them, and I don't mind sharing it because I think where I am now, there's nothing that I've gone through that hasn't been worth it. At the time it hurt and whatnot, but I remember many years ago when I was going through a divorce, it changed my life. It was a time that everything seemed to be going wrong and my life was falling apart. And I'm thinking, what did I do? What happened here? And it made me cry out. It made me search for God. And as I told you from my childhood, I knew that day was coming. I knew that time was coming where I had to make a decision, but I wasn't ready. You know how we are. We want to do what we do and put God on the back burner. I wasn't ready. But when things happen and there was nothing else, at least I felt like it was rock bottom. It probably was not, but that's how I felt. It made me do nothing. There was nowhere to go but up, to look up. So all those circumstances, and there's no reason for me to go into every part of it, but all those things happen to cause friction in my life. All those things that happen disrupt that comfort place that I had. And it made me say, okay, Lord, who are you? What is it? What is it you've been trying to show me? Where am I? It made me take a different stand. It made me turn. So, and these things happen repeatedly in our lives as we go from one level of consciousness to another. So, this particular verse, if you look, back up a little bit, she can have children, and in this time, that defines your femininity. That defines you as a woman. Here she is married, and her womb is closed. Person who loves her.
Ron, are you talking?
Ron, we can't hear you. Let me say this while we're waiting for Ron to get back. Angela, as Ron was explaining, one thing came to mind when you said that you knew that you were not where you're supposed to be. I think you are. All of us who are seeking are where we are supposed to be. We may think that we are not. We may feel that we are not. But the question becomes, if you think that you're not where you are supposed to be, what are you comparing that to? Where are you supposed to be? If you don't know where you're supposed to be, and you're not comparing it to where you think others are, then there's no way for you not to be where you are supposed to be. Does that make sense to you, dear?
Yes, it does.
Thank you. Rhonda, you back? Or are there any questions about anything that Ron was making note of, or any question about where we are at this moment in terms of our discussion? This whole all these verses that we've talked about thus far are actually focused on that barren womb. And until you embrace the reality that you don't know anything, which means that you are embracing the reality that your womb is barren, it's closed, and producing nothing at all at that moment except desire. Once you embrace that desire, that becomes the seed that impregnates that womb that was once barren. And from that comes an increased desire because of the excitement that you have when you begin to see things that you've never been shown before, especially when you are able to see things that you've never been shown before and don't even have to go travel the road of looking up what words mean and begin to understand even when we find the words and what they mean. They're not definitions. They are explaining an experience that we have as we travel this journey. Because if we say that spirit, the definition of spirit is Shekinah, then what is the definition of Shekinah? The Shekinah is, it is not defined. The Shekinah is, and it is, it is an energy that we are experiencing. Any questions or comments or anything?
Pastor, what it mean when she said she was bitter of a soul?
It means that she was frustrated. It means that that she had gotten to a place where she was tired of being tired, and at this point, she offered anything in order for her to be productive through her womb. So how does that apply to us? When we got to the place where we were not getting answers, we were frustrated, and that frustration that it wasn't anger or bitterness like you're angry with someone. It is a frustration a point of frustration that you reach when you're doing everything you can to see and to understand. And that frustration took her to the place where she cried out. Now, when Eli said that her lips were trembling, but no words were coming out of her mouth, her mouth was moving rather, and no words were coming out. I see that as being so frustrated. You don't really have words to say. Your lips begin to tremble because you have reached that low level of anger, because that's what frustration is. And out of that came for her, or for us, comes a desire for righteousness. Out of that becomes a desire to understand how can we possibly not only see, but also share what we see with others. Does that make sense to you, Charles?
I understand it more because I see that bitterness was a spiritual bitterness with inside of her instead of the bitterness that the world would come up with.
And please, Charles, let's be careful when we talk about the world. And the reason is because the world speaks of diversity. She had been inundated with religion, means that she had been flooded with religion. It was not what we call the world that affected her. Let me give you an example of that. Jesus came to the diversity in the world. He said that Jesus came unto his own received him not. That was the church. That was the priesthood. We did not receive him. Jesus spoke to those that we, through the church, are told to disassociate ourselves with. And that's why they call him a wine bibber. Maybe he's in the club or drink wine or drink alcohol as it is in our day. And the church condemns us for being in those places. Yet it was to those people that Jesus went to explain to them and to help them to see what the law really is, as opposed to what the priest said it was. And an example of today is the pastors tell us what the scriptures are saying, when in essence, that is not what they're saying. So what does that do? That turns people off, and they go into what we have been taught to say. They go into the world, and as opposed to understanding that the reason they went into what we call the world is because the things that they were receiving in this setting only condemned them and did not give them an avenue to not only enjoy their lives, but to find out who they are in the midst of it all. When Jesus spoke to people, they began to see an avenue of freedom that would give them the opportunity to not only be who they were created to be, but also give them the opportunity to free themselves from this bondage that resulted in them sneaking around doing stuff and hiding it, rather than being in a place where they could actually enjoy themselves. And one of the examples of that is this. When we meet as teachers, what do? That when we're meeting in person, of course, we share wine. We had no problem with that. The church says wrong unless you're doing communion. When we go to our enclaves in Philly, what do? We went to restaurants. We went to places where alcohol was being served. Did that change anything? No, it didn't. And the very ones who have taught us that are the ones who are doing the same thing and making us feel guilty when we do it, when it has no adverse effect on our soul, has no adverse effect on our journey. Does that make sense, guys, or does that resonate with you?
Yeah.
Thank you. It makes me.
It does.
Thank you. Ron, are you back?
I think so.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I don't know where I kind of left off, but what I was trying to say to Angela was, initially with all of us, God gets our attention with something that is personal, something that is important to us, but not only was this lesson showing how important this was to her being Hannah. This is a lesson to all of us. The beautiful thing about the scriptures is that it touches us all in that place, in that place that needs to be filled. So using these examples, we can see look at this as a metaphor and see that this is talking about Ron, it's talking about Charles, it's talking about James, and has been explained. The womb is a spiritual place. It is not something that is that just talks about femininity. So that's the distress that you see in verse 10. And so I'm sure you guys completed that discussion. I just didn't hear it. So, Angela, are you okay? What were you? Any further questions about that? What was said to you?
Good. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, and also, Ron, I can relate, to what was just said, because again, as we come to know that Peninnah, was basically mocking Hannah for being barren, but at the same time, again, through all of her personal and mental, emotional suffering, we come to appreciate that even in our experiences, we cry out. And I think that was just something that hit me, very strongly, when we talk about crying out to the Lord. And it may not be in that sense where we all cry out differently, but we need to, appreciate. And I think I was reading in Isaiah where it says, cry aloud and spare not, and lift up thy voices. And so, just as Hannah experienced what she did, I think we all have experiences where sometimes we go through personal or mental or emotional suffering, but, through it all, it's a blessing that we're able to understand that we have the mind of Christ. As Pastor has said on several times, these things that I've done, you shall even do greater things. And so I think it's bringing us into a greater spiritual enlightenment that we have the power to change those situations or circumstances, as one. So I just wanted to share those thoughts. And,
Ron?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
I have a question.
Okay.
After she cried out and then she spoke, and then Eli was speculating that she was drunk, and then she explained the situation to him. And he told her, go in peace in verse 17. And then after that, she went home, or went on her way, whatever. And she began to eat again, and she was not sad any longer. So what does that say for us?
That was going to be my question. What took place? What took place in those verses? You're exactly right. That exchange with Eli had to happen. Again, this is spiritual. This has to happen. This is all a part of it. You mind if I read them and we continue the discussion? Now, start at verse 12, and then we'll get to Audra's question. Now it came about as the Lord continued praying before. Now it came about as she continued praying before the Lord that Eli was watching her mouth. As for Hannah, she was speaking in her heart, only her lips were moving, but her voice was not heard. So Eli thought she was drunk. Then Eli said to her, how long will you make yourself drunk? Put away your wine from you. But Hannah answered and said, no, my Lord, I am a woman oppressed in spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but I have poured out my soul before the Lord. Do not consider your maidservant as a worthless woman, for I have spoken until now out of my great concern and provocation. Then Eli answered and said, Go in peace, and may God of Israel grant you petition that you have asked of him. And she said, Let your maidservant find favor in your sight. So the woman went her way and ate, and her face was no longer sad. What just took place? Spiritually, this is a necessary thing that takes place. When you cry out, you cry from the depth of who you are. This is from your soul. This is a pain and a wanting and a reaching for something, and you're crying out to God, and you're emptying yourself. This exchange with Eli, the necessity of it is this crying out, this pain that she is feeling is being transformed. Eli doesn't recognize it. He sees it, but he doesn't recognize it. So he has to say something to her. Her words to him is the necessary part of this. Eli means to go up, to ascend, to be lofty. So here is the part of the Lord answering her. This exchange with Eli is a very necessary part of this. And again, we're talking from a spiritual place. This is her elevation. Her cry leads to her elevation. And when she has this cry and he has this exchange to her and he sees clearly what she is saying now, he understands that what he saw, the darkness that he saw, is being made into light. He says to her, Go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant your petition. That blessing exalts her. She's already pregnant. This thing has already happened. This is spiritual. This is already happened. So when this exchange takes place, she becomes, it is the opening of her womb. And she becomes a mother based on what is taking place. The physical part hasn't even happened yet. We're talking spiritually. This is a beautiful example that the spirituality of who we are and what we desire or trumps time altogether. This exchange had to happen. It is no different. It is no different than Rebecca saying to what did she say to Isaac? And Isaac had already blessed that boy, but what he had blessed him with was negative. But when Rebecca comes to him and they touch and agree, when there's balance there, he comes and he blesses him. The true blessing is what he says to him when he and Rebecca become one. So when you look at this, it says it changed who she was. She went and had something to eat, as Audrey said, and her face changed. This is done. This already done. But it doesn't happen until she has this exchange.
I have a question.
Well, one second, Evelyn. I just want to make sure Audrey didn't have a follow-up to hers. Hold on just a second, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Well, my question basically is, what does this mean for us? And I mean us right now. And I don't just mean us on the phone. I would just mean people in general. What does this mean? Because it seems to me that people get to the point of crying out, but in a lot of cases they don't come to the place where they have this uplift, or to the point where they can go in peace. I mean, you see it in church every Sunday, you know, where people cry out at the altar or wherever, but on the next Sunday, they come back and cry out at the altar. And so how do we get to or find this place or this uplift so that we can go in peace?
Beautiful question. Beautiful question. Because that's what we started off with looking at this and saying, this is who and where we are. Go ahead, Pastor.
I have to go back to the crying out from Hannah. Suppose that when we cry out, the Eli in Hannah's life is the light that's within us. And the crying out from your soul means that you are crying out because you truly are searching for the God who created you. And you don't realize that you are the essence of that God who created you. And when she cried out from the depth of her soul, she what responded to by the light in her, because within herself she thought something was wrong with her, and suppose the light in her, the essence of Elohim within her was responding to her cry, and when she was approached as though she was a drunk, that was the opportunity, that was the method used to force her to look at herself. And she saw herself as being more than what others saw her. No, she was not worthless at all. When she recognized her value, that is when she was able to receive what was offered to her. When the Eli, the priest, the essence of the Shekinah that's in her said to her, "Go in peace." What was happening is she embraced the reality of being a womb being open, and when she lay with Elkanah, the physical act took place and she became pregnant. So in relationship to how that relates to us as people, when we cry out from the depths of our soul, that's when we begin to embrace our worthiness, try to hold on to that. And what happens is we leave that place of joy, that place of having been accepted for who we are. We leave it in a state of peacefulness, and that is not shaken from us, because when we face the adversities, we remember the experience that we had, and from that experience, we recognize that we are indeed impregnated, and that is the physical response to a spiritual truth. Now, to Audrey's question about going to the altar, the reason there is no change is because there is no God of our creation. It is a God that we created. And that altar call is bringing you to a place where you are constantly begging God that doesn't exist for deliverance. And your expectation is not to hear anything internally. Your expectation is for a God outside of you, a God absent to your presence, to reach out to you and make a change in your life, not understanding that you are the change. You are the source of that change from within. Does that make sense so far, Audrey?
Yeah, and I really think we need to put this into the macro so that people understand it, because I mean, when you're hearing about all these people committing suicide and it's just heartbreaking because they can't get to a place where they cry out and realize they can change, the situation can change within themselves. Anyway, I just think we just need to put this into the macro.
And I agree with you totally, because not only are they dying by suicide, but when we look at the people killing each other on the street, they're killing themselves. And,
Yeah.
and if you really think about it, not only are they killing themselves, they are dying by suicide, a method that they've chosen by being putting themselves in an environment that they are in when they'll kill or kill someone else. So I do agree that this need to be in the macro. But hastening back to this particular scripture in reference to that, no one has told them or shown them how to cry out. They don't even know what a soul is or whether or not they have one. Why? Because the soul is what goes to heaven. And the soul is not something that we truly experience right now. We cleanse our soul by not drinking, by not cursing, by not doing this, by not doing that, according to what we have been taught. However, when we put it spiritually in the macro, then we start hearing things like the people who are younger are beginning to say, no, I don't go to church, but I am spiritual. What does that mean? And the majority of the people who are talking about their spirituality are females. They are wombs. And with this understanding of this acceptance of being spiritual and not really knowing what it means, it is our obligation to make sure that the crying out is in the macro, and how you respond to that is from within. And the crying out is not necessarily a face filled with tears. The crying out is that you are fed up with the life that you're living. You're fed up with the environment that you're in, and you're seeking a change outside of putting yourself in an environment where you can allow someone else to kill you, which is suicide by a friend or suicide by whatever. So
I agree, but I think even though people have been taught whatever in the church, I believe in my heart of hearts that they still know the difference. And that is why young people are saying, I don't want to be part of the church. I'd rather be more spiritual, because inside ourselves, if we know the difference, and even if we were taught everything else, we still know the difference, which is how a lot of us got to where we are now on this phone, because we knew the difference. So I think putting it out there, people will be able to understand it and realize it, and if they truly want to realize it, the Creator will allow that to happen, just like He did for Hannah. He'll do it for whoever. So I think even though they've been taught a lot of doctrine, they'll know the truth when they hear it.
That's why it's imperative that we put it in the macro, because they will hear it in a place other than their natural ears. They will hear it in deep within their souls. Why? Because they know it's something out there. They don't label it, but they search for it. And that I do believe that we are indeed fulfilling the obligation that we have been given to bring balance to this earth, but we cannot do that if we ignore the reality of what's happening, not only with within the church itself, but also within the communities, within the environments that are not connected to the church. Think about it. I think in Philadelphia, I started counting churches when we were on Broad Street, and within 2 blocks, I think I counted about 8 churches, and nothing changing. Why is it that nothing changes? Why is it that nothing changes? It's because those who occupy those pews don't care about the ones around them. And that is the reason not only they move out of the communities, they don't even come back into the community to offer anything. And here we are offering everything. You don't have to do it by standing face to face with someone, but you do have to do it by virtue of your desire. And your desire starts with a physical, personal, face-to-face connection. That's how every one of us started, with a physical connection and morphed into the spiritual understanding that we have been shown. Does that resonate?
Yes.
Thank you. Good question, Audrey. Anyone else? Question or comments?
Yes, this is Angela. I got another question.
Okay.
He was when Hannah was crying out, is that the same, or I hear you refer to spiritual intimacy? So is that the same, one and the same?
And just want to make sure I understood. You say spiritual intimacy?
Mm-hmm. Talking about when Hannah was crying out, emptying her soul out, and then she began to receive spiritual insight from within. I'm saying, is that, I've heard that term used when we talk spiritual intimacy. I was just asking.
Pastor, can you address that, please?
Sure. Her crying out is a desire for spiritual intimacy. If I'm permitted to put this in a physical term, physical intimacy is a cry from your body, and it's not necessarily sexual. It can simply be companionship or the desire to be around someone who you feel comfortable with, or people with whom you feel comfort. The cry is for intimacy. It is just to know who you are. It's not because you think that you're going to become intimate. It's because you want more, and you don't know that more is intimacy until you begin to search with your soul for what truth is. For example, when I and most of all of us really started this journey, we knew it was more. We had no clue about this type of intimacy, but we knew it was more. And how did we approach this more, or to find it? Asking questions, doing research in a physical way. And that led us to a place where we started talking about being one with our Creator, and then being one with the universe. And then I am the universe, and the universe is me. And then realizing that oneness with the Creator is recognizing that we are Elohim, because that's the image and likeness that we were created. So this is a journey itself that started with a cry that leads to intimacy, that leads to this deep desire. Does that make sense, or is that resonate?
Yes, that makes sense.
Okay. Thank you for the question, Angela. Thank you. Good question. this may be another good place to pause.
I think Evelyn had a question that we didn't go back to.
Yeah, I am. I'm going to go back to it. That's what I want to end on, if we can, if y'all don't mind. But I want to see first if anybody had any other questions or comments before we went to that. But thank you, Kathy. The thing I wanted to say was, Pastor touched on something that
Hold 1 second. Are you going to Evelyn's question now, or after you finish?
I'm going to. There's something I want to say. Then I'm going to Evelyn's question.
Great. Okay.
You had something you wanted to add, because I wanted to go back when you said Eli is inside of us. So I wanted to talk about that a second.
Let's see if Evelyn's question before we leave that, because that probably is going to carry us in another direction.
Okay. Evelyn's question was about Samuel, and I understand what she said. See, there's several names here that has God in them, and literally, if you go back to that first verse, Elihu, Elkanah, and there was one more that has God in the name. Eli. All of those. Yeah, and Samuel. There's one more. I don't see it. Okay, but all of them have El in the name, and that's no coincidence. And that's to show you, because what Pastor was saying, and I guess I could tie all this together. I didn't want it to sound confusing when he said Eli is in us. All of this is in us. All of these names, all of these characteristics are in us. This is showing you spiritually who you are and what this journey looks like. So Samuel comes from is what we become. We become that which is Samuel means it is the name of God. El is the name of God. But the word Shem is the root of the first part of, and it means a name. It means a name or your character. Shem also means light or sound or atmosphere. Light talks about vibrations. It comes from that first part of it is Shem, or it could mean Shema. Shema. So Shem is sound and light. Shema, it means to hear, but they talk about vibrations. So this is the Elohim, the El in you, the godliness in you is the vibrations, the sound, the hearing, the word that is in you, that when you say, this resonates with me, you're saying, I'm in rhythm with the universe because I hear El. I hear God. And that is the transformation of who you are. So that becoming Samuel is back to becoming that conduit. You hear from God so that you can give it back to God. You give it back to mankind because you speak to the El that's in every man. You are the rhythm and the vibration that you hear in the universe. You are part of that, and that is a part of you. And that is what you give back, that same vibration. So being being Samuel is not just a name, and that's what we talk about or started from the beginning. And I love the understanding, because I did not have an understanding when we started this of womb. But as we dump all that out, as we allow that to be emptied out, as we desire this thing, and as we cry from the depths of our heart and our souls, and we are filled with truth, That's what we become. And that resonance, that vibration becomes stronger. And that realization of who you are. So being Samuel is being a part of the universe, of being the universe. You are a visible part of Elohim that man sees in the earth. And I'll just say it out there like that. You are that visibility that man sees in the earth of Elohim. So when as we digest this and to see how important this is, that we understand this, and as I love what Audrey said a minute ago, her heart goes out when she hears people. That's who you are. As all that stuff is being emptied out of us, we are filled with compassion for mankind. So it's no coincidence that you hear and see all these things. So can anybody say that a little better? Can anybody add on to it, please?
The other guy you're talking about is in 16, Balaam.
16. Huh?
The other man you were talking about in 16 is Balaam, is the daughter of Balaam, Belial.
Oh, Belial, the daughter of Belial, that means worthlessness. That's one of the meanings of that is worthlessness.
Oh, okay. Okay. What version you have, Charles? You in King James?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, there was Ephraim, Elikon. There was a couple of names there that stood out that had L in it, and that kind of stood out to me as well when we looked at this. But does that make sense though? And looking at Samuel, and if you go back and remember Samuel's life, Samuel has from looking at his relationship with Eli, the sons of Eli, I mean, everything around him was not positive. But just like everything around us is not positive, it takes all of that to shape you, to show you, to grow you into who you are. But his relationship with the Creator starts in his youth. It starts right here at his birth. But you see that he was, even as a young child, his mother, and I'm getting into other chapters, of course, but his mother brought a tunic, if you will, an apron for him that the priest would wear. She'd make him one every year that she came up. So he even, there is even an episode in here where he is asleep and he has God talks to him, where he first recorded anyway that he hears the word of God. So this is a very fascinating person, and that person is what's fascinating about us, about each one of us individually and collectively. All of us are Samuel.
May I add something to that?
Please, sir.
The whole story, pretty much, in the Old Testament especially, is hidden about us being Elohim, is hidden in the names. For example, Israel, and I've said this 1,000 times, is not a geographical location. Israel is not a race, a religion. It is not a tribe. It is not a group of people. Excuse me. Israel is not a doctrine of religion. Israel is not even spiritual doctrine. Israel speaks to those who rule as God. Israel. Samuel. I requested this of God. I requested him from God. Samuel. So when you see El, what is the prefix? What does that mean before you get to the L? Because when you see L, whether it's at the front of the word or at the end of the word, L always explains what comes previous to it or what comes after it. So it is always compound when it has something at the beginning or at the end of it. Does that make sense, Evelyn?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Everyone, the thing about Eli.
Pastor?
Oh, you were going to talk about Eli being inside of us, and that would be where we stop. That's what you said.
Yeah, I kind of tied it into the other explanation about Samuel. As I was saying when we were going to, I was going to go through these verses. I didn't want to say, because again, I don't want to be confusing. But Eli is inside of all of us. That thing that she felt, the thing that she talked to inside of her, is what brings her peace. She sees God inside of her, and this not being the first time she cried out, as Audrey pointed out. But there's something different about this. There's something different about taking that stand. So we look at this, and hopefully, as we dissect this, we can see who we are, and hope this resonates with us. And I hope we see that as most of these lessons, this has something very powerful in this that I think will really come to us to be clearer or understanding as the days go forward, as we see. Because I agree with something that was said earlier. Things are coming so rapidly now. Things are happening in the earth now so fast that I think we are being prepared for something. Those are my words. That we're being prepared for whatever, actually. I hope this has made sense. And again, I invite you to write it down if not, or send a text message. But thank you for everybody for hearing. Thank you for your input. And hope you have a great rest of your day, and look forward to tomorrow evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thanks, Ron.
Take care. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.